It doesn't happen too often these days, but sometimes when Apple releases a new Mac, it comes with a horrible new feature I can't imagine anyone liking. Let's go over some of the worst times this has happened. Number 1. USB-C only charging. From 2015 to 2018, Apple's entire MacBook line went from having a huge host of ports on board to, in some cases, literally just one. Until that point, MacBook Pros had come with multiple USB-A ports, Thunderbolt ports that could also be used as display outputs, and an SD card slot. Oh, and a dedicated charging port too, in the form of MagSafe 2. The MacBook Air was a similar story, but in 2015, Apple released the 12-inch MacBook. It's still the smallest laptop they've ever made, but one question remains. Why on earth did it come with just one USB-C port? It's a flawed design, let's be honest. If you want to charge your Mac and access data from a USB stick at the same time, it's just not going to happen. Same goes for charging and using an external display. Remember, this was before Thunderbolt 3 was implemented into Apple's Type-C ports, so there weren't a variety of docks available either. Although the 12-inch MacBook became infamous for its lack of ports, Apple began to strip ports from its MacBook Pro and MacBook Air lines in the following couple of years. We ended up with these MacBooks that felt like the peak of Apple's computer design, but were so limited by their port selection. The 2020 M1 MacBooks are a great example of this. Amazing power on the inside, only 2 ports on the outside. Thankfully, Apple went back on their mistake in 2021, giving users back the HDMI, MagSafe and SD card ports in the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Number 2. I fear I may be in controversial territory here, but I think the T2 chip, first released in 2018, is a majorly flawed feature. So T2 does several things. It is a processor of sorts, which helps the main chips cope with tasks like image processing, speeding up overall performance, and it's also a secure section separated from the CPU, which helps store things like encryption keys, fingerprint data, and more. Lastly, the T2 chip lets you use Secure Boot, which basically locks down the boot sequence so it only recognizes signed and official operating systems that are approved by Apple. On the one hand, Apple were making significant strides in security by implementing the T2 chip. It's a real asset to have a completely separate chip able to lock down things like fingerprints and passwords. The chip also does improve the speed of your Mac. It's a jack of all trades, able to improve SSD performance, image and video processing, and more. There are quite a few downsides worth thinking about though. The Secure Boot feature only works on macOS, meaning if you want to run Windows through Boot Camp or any version of Linux, you have to disable Secure Boot and lose the extra security you'd have on your macOS installation. Also, T2 was horrible for repairability. The SSD controller is linked to the T2 chip inside your Mac, so if the computer breaks and you can't afford to get it fixed, there's no way of getting your data back unless you go to an expensive, Apple-authorized technician. The same can be said for repairs on the actual T2 chip. If you don't get replacement parts put in by an official repair center, there's a very good chance your Mac could end up bricked and entirely unusable. Before the T2 chip, you could fairly easily take the SSD out of most Macs and just replace it yourself, or swap the SSD into another MacBook to read the old data you needed and back it up. Before T2, repairs were a lot easier too. It was so much easier to just buy a new SSD or any other part and just fit it straight to your Mac. Almost every Mac from 2018 until now has had some form of the T2 chip inside. Apple Silicon Macs have a very similar thing built into the main chip, although the original T2 was a separate chip outside of the main processing units. Of course, there's people who swear by this thing being a massive jump forward. I'm just not convinced. Number 3. The butterfly keyboard. Yeah, it goes without saying. I'm amazed Apple didn't do more stress testing these things before putting them on literally every laptop they've made for a good couple of years. The butterfly keyboard was supposed to be a new type of keyboard with far more advanced butterfly-shaped switches than the regular scissor ones most laptops were known to have. The thing was, the real reason the butterfly keyboard was invented was to save space. It had almost no key travel, meaning every time you pressed a key, it would almost feel like a solid object. It's like the opposite of a mechanical keyboard where every keystroke feels like a chunky mechanical click. Not only was there no movement, but because the keys were so shallow, any sort of dirt or dust getting under the keys could stop one of them working very easily. It's difficult for me to hate the butterfly keyboard, as one of my first Macs was the 2015 12-inch Retina MacBook. That was the first one to get the butterfly keyboard, and I loved how thin the device was. It was so much fun to use, and I really never had any problems with the keyboard. But I have to say, that was before I hit university and an endless onslaught of assignments, and way before I started writing videos for YouTube pretty much weekly. So now I can sympathise a lot more with people who struggle to write properly in the long term. It is mad to think, of all the parts in a laptop Apple could get wrong, it was the keyboard they messed up so badly. They ended up paying out a total of around $50 million to customers who were affected by the dodgy butterfly keyboard. Some customers were entitled to up to $395 in repair or replacement costs. Alright, so now I'm going to go through some speed rounds. These are some smaller scale mess ups Apple have made quite recently. The notch in virtually all modern MacBooks still baffles me and many others. It would be fine if it were a lot shallower, but Apple seemed to insist on keeping an iPhone-like notch at the top of their laptop screens until this day. Of course, the panels are brilliant. They're really high resolution, with often twice the refresh rates seen on their notchless displays. I just think the layouts of the previous 16-inch MacBook design was the right way to go. The switch from a glowing white glass Apple logo on the back of MacBooks to a plain aluminium one in the mid-2010s was disappointing for pretty much everyone. There are a lot of theories on why they did this, ranging from giving the back panel more structural integrity to stopping light getting through the new, thinner display elements from the back. Whatever the reason, it was a highly favoured feature that defined Apple laptops as far back as the 1999 PowerBook G3. Let's be real, it's probably not coming back anytime soon though. Alright, this one isn't a Mac feature, but I don't see enough people talking about it. MagSafe for iPhones is the biggest flop of a new feature I've seen Apple try to pull off in years. It started with the iPhone 12, where Apple advertised MagSafe as a smarter way of wireless charging, as well as using accessories like wallets and cases. The flaw in this though is physics, really. MagSafe uses similar technology to the QI standard for charging, pretty much the exact same as all other wireless chargers, and wireless charging just isn't what it's cut out to be. iPhones are capped at 25 watts on MagSafe, but can charge up to 45 watts using a regular wired connection. Not only is wired charging faster, but it doesn't heat up a massive metal coil next to your battery like wirelessly charging through MagSafe will. That kind of heat is proven to kill your battery health a lot faster than just using a cable. So yeah, I think those are pretty much the major mess ups Apple has come out with over the last decade or so. Thank you very much for watching. Really big thank you to my members on Patreon. Joining my Patreon ensures I earn a set monthly amount, which I'm really grateful for, especially at times like now when my videos aren't doing especially well for views. Feel free to join the What's on Your Screen Discord, by the way, as we talk about all things computing, old and new. It's all linked in the description down below. Subscribers, I'll see you next week.